Member from Timmins, James Bay.
Speaker, just wait for the mic to come on. There we go. Mr. Speaker, I just want to take this occasion during this throne speech to outline a couple of things that I think the government needs to reflect in light of this particular throne speech. This government is trying to put itself forward as a progressive government, a government that is doing the right things for all people all of the time. And I don't doubt that there is some goodwill on the part of government members and the government generally to do some of these things. But I think for them to try to portray themselves as being this hugely progressive government that's always doing the right thing for all of the people all of the time leaves a little bit to be desired. And I just want to go through 2 or 3 things that are happening where I live that I think exemplifies what this government is not doing and what they continue to fail to do even after this particular election. The first one is the government says, we're the progressives. We're the ones that are going to do what's right for the people of Ontario, and we're going to stand to make sure that government is there for people when they need it. But yet, when you look at Northern Ontario, who is it that's privatizing the ONTC? Who is selling off Ontario? It's the Liberal government across the way who's decided that they're going to take a mantra out of the Conservative books and themselves act like a bunch of Conservatives when they get the government and actually sell off Ontario, which is one of the profitable arms of the Ontario Northland, or the ONTC, the Ontario Northland Telecommunication Transportation Corporation, and they're going to sell it off. And supposedly, Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals are trying to say, oh, we're the progressives. We're the ones that stand for making sure that we shore up services that people need across this province and make the investments that allow us to be able to function as a province. And I, for one, I think, and a lot of members of my caucus, the NDP caucus, would agree those investments are necessary. But why is it right for the government to have cancelled the only train that we have in northeastern Ontario, the only means to be able to transport people all the way from Moosonee down to Toronto by rail, and at the same time say it's okay to cancel that, but it's also right to be able to make an investment in transportation infrastructure, namely transit, subways and others, in the City of Toronto and other great cities of this province. Now, I want to say up front, I think the investments in the City of Toronto are needed. I think it's yet to be determined by the end of this particular 4.5-year mandate if the government actually would have moved on those issues. I think they portrayed this as an issue that they're interested in, certainly, but when it comes to actually delivering for the people of the City of Toronto, I'm not convinced that, in fact, they're going to do so. But all I know as sitting from a northerner, I look at what is immediately affected by the people that I represent, and we have lost our only transportation train connection in northeastern Ontario. It is a Liberal government under Kathleen Wynne who has decided to cancel the train. It was Dalton McGuinty's government that started it, but certainly Kathleen Wynne could have reversed it. She had a year in government to do so before this election. Not only has she agreed to continue Dalton McGuinty's legacy of cancelling the train, she's also said that she's going to accelerate the sell-off of Ontario, the profitable telecommunications wing of Ontario Northland. So how can a government, on the one hand, or I say a political party on the one hand, portray itself as being this progressive movement that's going to do all that is good for the people of Ontario and ensure to preserve public services when they're prepared to sell off Ontario Northland, an agency of the Crown that has been there for over 100 years, something even Mike Harris didn't do, quite frankly, when he was in power. He had looked at the possibility of selling the train off to CN and decided to back off. So here we have the Liberals outdoing the Conservatives when it comes to a move to the right on privatization. So I say, in that particular example, job not well done. I look at another one, and this is somewhat related, but very important to the economy of Northern Ontario, and that's in the case of forestry. We have mills across Ontario, Northern Ontario, that have shut their door partly because of, yes, what happened to the North American economy and what's happened with the market when it comes to the sale of wood, but where you have people that are prepared to invest in their mills and to be able to keep their mills open and create the wealth and create the jobs in Northern Ontario, there's been little in the way of support for the government. And I look at Little John Enterprises in the City of Timmins as a good example of that. Little John's made an investment of quite an amount of money, over $1 million, in order to do an expansion to that mill, in order to be able to produce more and higher quality wood that he can sell into the market. What he's lacking is a commitment on the government on the part of wood allocation for that particular mill. When they did the expansion to the mill, it was an understanding that the government would do would make sure that there'd be an allocation of timber that would go to that mill so that they can be guaranteed a supply of wood as mills need to be able to operate. Here we are a number of years after that mill is open, and Little John's is still having to deal with the open market trying to get wood. Now, in a time where there's a lot of sawmills that are down as a result of the shutdown we've seen in Northern Ontario, he's able to get some wood, but he's able to get wood at a much higher price, which means to say his operating cost is higher, and he's not secured should the market turn around. And it will turn around. In time, there will be a huge demand for wood, and what does an operator at Little John Enterprises do when trying to compete with the large multinationals that operate mills in northeastern Ontario? He will be at a disadvantage when it comes to the price of wood because he will have to compete on the open market. And that's not how the wood allocation system should have worked in the first place. The wood allocation system was always you allot wood to a mill so that they're guaranteed a supply, so that they can finance themselves and they can operate knowing what the price of their wood's going to be. What this government has done is taken the wood allocation system and turned it entirely on its ear. And I just say to the government across the way, that is not what a progressive government does. What a progressive government does is it finds a way to balance the interests of large and small when it comes to operators in the wood and the forest industry, and make sure that the public will and the public good is reflected in the policies that come forward. And put on top of that what you've done with the price of hydro, you have managed to put places like Extrata Copper, where I represent the city of Timmins, out of business as a result of high price of power. But those that still stand, like Little John's, like Tembec, who operates a paper mill up in Kapuskasing, and a number of other operators in my riding and across Northern Ontario, you've really put those people at a hard position. Where was the government speaking about how they're going to make hydro affordable for homeowners and how they're going to make hydro affordable for industry in this province as a progressive move? Somehow or other, they tried to say that we as New Democrats, because we said it's important that people have affordable power when it comes to being able to power up their homes and not having to pay hydro bills that are going through the roof, they were trying to say that somehow or other that wasn't a progressive thing to do. Well, I'm sorry, if Mom and Dad, if you know, John and Joe Ontario is not, Jane and Joe Ontario are not able to pay their hydro bills, I don't see that, quite frankly, as a progressive thing. I see that as regressive. What politics should be about is about making sure that people are able to live in this province, able to prosper in this province, and able to afford to purchase the services that they need. So I just say to the government across the way, you can, as much as you want, try to position yourself as being progressive, but for those people back home who are trying to pay their hydro bills, to those industries back home that are trying to pay their hydro bills, I don't think being progressive is doing nothing about the price of electricity. In fact, your own Minister of Energy, prior to the last election, said that hydro rates would be going up yet another 44% over the next number of years. That on top of increases that we've had in hydro alone as already that have put electricity prices through the roof. So this government can try to pretend as much as they want that in fact they are a progressive government. I believe that this government is essentially a conservative government in action that campaigns like New Democrats in order to sound good during the campaign, but when they get the government, continue doing the same kinds of things and the old kind of politics that we've seen around this place for far too long.